You're listening in on an animated discussion about Batman the Animated Series with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic extraordinaire from thecinematropolis.com. And today's topic is Season 1, Episode 63, Fires from Olympus.
All right, Caleb, I'm the one who pushed this episode.
You insisted. We've got to talk some Maxi Zeus.
So tell me, I believe that this is your first brush with Maxi Zeus. I mean, you watched the show back in the day, so you've probably seen this episode before. But you came to this episode with no knowledge of a Batman villain called Maxi Zeus. Am I more or less correct?
No, I knew who Maxi. I knew he existed.
Okay.
I have like read about him.
Guy in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah,
and stuff too.
I've read about him somewhere, but I'm not confident I've seen this episode before. Aspects of it seem familiar, but I was like, well, I don't know. This is really fuzzy. So I don't know. So especially as an adult, though, this is probably my first major interaction with Maxi Zeus, and he is so wild. He's insane, and in some ways, it makes him like one of the darkest characters on the show because he's actually just insane, and not insane like in a Joker sort of way,
right?
Not like in that obviously this is heightened, but he's insane in a way that a very normal person could go insane.
Yes, I mean, we will get into it, but there is a very human story going on underneath all this bombast and craziness, and it is absolutely tragic. And I will say, in a few episodes, we will talk about who I consider to probably be Batman's actually most tragic and realistically mentally unhinged villain. So we'll get to that guy.
There's a lot of those to talk about.
But Maxi Zeus, for being a very C-list Batman villain, brings a lot of pathos. And so, yes, I wanted to talk about him.
I'm glad we're talking about this. You know, Joshua, and I'm just going to throw this out there. Our next batch of episodes in general it's one of the more unusual blocks, and I'm really glad.
True.
I'm actually really into it. I just was thinking as I was preparing for our show today, I was like, Maxi Zeus is kind of weird. And then I thought about the next 3 or 4 episodes we're going to do. I'm like, these are all really weird.
And for them to come
back to back.
Yes, and to bridge the first, I hate to say season, let's say the first order of episodes and the second order of episodes, for that weirdness to just bridge that gap is kind of internally weird. I would like to have been a fly on that creative wall.
I'm curious because it seems like, and listen, it's not that I think these characters are bottom of the barrel, because I think they just do a great job. I mean, especially with Maxi Zeus showing this really weird character no one else had ever heard of probably, and giving him his own episode. It's the only time we see this character in the DCAU, by the way. He doesn't come back later, so this is a true one-off. But yeah, it's weird they would end the first run on a bunch of like one-off like D-list villains, but to their credit, they make them all really compelling stories.
It's true. That's true. Okay, let's do the basics before we get into the real meat of the episode.
This title card was lazy, Joshua.
Yeah.
It was a lazy
I like the
title
music
card.
a lot.
Yes.
The music is a really good choice that drags a D title card into a C, maybe if I'm generous, C plus title card, but probably
You're
not.
being way too generous, man.
Because I really like the music.
The music is good. The music goes from an F to a D for me because I do like the music, but it's just a mountain.
The visual's really boring.
It's lame.
The mountain is kind of a particularly banal choice because while it does nod toward Maxi's delusions, he's not actually on a mountain.
No, there's not a mountain in this. There's not an actual mountain in this episode.
Mount Olympus, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But he has a sky fortress that is his Olympus. It's not a mountain. And so, yeah, it's not great. I want to give it more for the music, but I shouldn't.
I'm sorry. I do love that he has his own private Greek penthouse.
Yes.
It's like a Greek. What's the temple? The Greek.
Like a Parthenon style.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like a Parthenon just sitting on top of this skyscraper in Gotham, and no one else, by the way, I think it's hilarious, no one's ever mentioned this before. No one ever acknowledges it again. Like even Batman one day just like, man, I don't know, Gotham be weird.
You do think if you're Batman, you're flying around in the Batwing and you glance down and you see that somebody's penthouse apartment is done up in the style of the Parthenon, you go, that's a person who's going to be a problem for me.
I should at least consider monitoring this person a little bit.
They are committing to a gimmick before they are robbing banks. Man.
That's impressive for the F form.
You're probably right. I should not give as much credit to, and also we're coming off of a big line of lackluster title cards. So I might be wanting to give too much appreciation for what amounts to one good musical choice.
Okay, Joshua, I got to ask you, to your own, the way you grade these title cards, what does this actually tell us about the episode?
Well, you have now pointed out all of my hypocrisy because it tells us nothing.
I mean, it tells us that there's Greek theme.
The title is great. Yes, but only in the actual, the font choice is also kind of Greek-esque. So, okay, it does let us know there's going to be that aspect, but it does not tell us anything about what actually happens. And it's not even really fire that he's shooting from Olympus, technically. It's a lightning bolt, which is more on theme for Zeus, but not for the time. You know what?
Fires from Olympus is a cooler name than lightning from Olympus.
No, it's true.
But also, there's no fires up in Olympus.
Bolts from Olympus? There were ways that this could go. You know what? You convinced me. I'm downgrading it. It's now a D-.
D-?
No, because you're right. You're right. According to my own admittedly idiosyncratic criteria, where the most important thing to me is that it be clever in telling us something about the episode, it doesn't do that at all. And the visual is boring.
This was drawn by one of their their graphic designers at 4:55 on a Friday.
That's right.
He's like, crap, I gotta get this out. Okay.
Which is very unfortunate because the rest of this episode is
great.
Very good.
Yeah, it's
very good.
It is. So it leans very, okay. So, one, it's great set pieces. So it's entertaining.
Series of great set pieces.
A lot of the explosions in this were awesome. And again, I know I'm watching on the Blu-ray, so it's like even better because I'm like, oh, these explosions are so good. But so a lot of really compelling set pieces. The gimmick of the Greek makes for a fun fight with Batman, fighting through the Parthenon upstairs. That was all really cool. The snakes, all the gargoyles, all that super, super cool, super fun. But then at the heart of it, you have Maxi Zeus, who is truly insane. And that's what I'm saying. There is something more sad about it than like the Joker. The Joker is just a maniac. This guy, he has like a wife or is it girlfriend, wife, partner?
They're a little sketchy on exactly. She works as his secretary,
right?
But also clearly has an above board romantic relationship.
Like they had been romantic before he like went off the deep end.
She's in pictures of him when he's healthy in Greece.
Yes.
Like she's in some of those pictures of him at the actual Parthenon and with some of his antiques that he's in when he's collecting them. She's there. She's been a part of his life for a while. Do they name her even?
Yes, she is Cleo.
That's right. Of course she is.
Voiced by Bess Armstrong.
And I think it's Cleo that really is hitting us. That's really making us feel this. Because Maxi Zeus is definitely a tragic figure in his own right. But the bombast of who he is kind of keeps us from noticing in a very Joker or Riddler way. But when you have this woman who is right there in his presence breaking down like, Maxi, it didn't used to be like this. And when Batman talks to Cleo and she's saying to him, he didn't used to be this way. The stress got to him. Business got bad. He had to work with mobsters. The stress of working with mobsters cracked his mind. And then she breaks down in tears over it. Suddenly, I feel for Maxi Zeus through Cleo.
Right.
It's amazing.
And of course, we feel for Cleo also, but she definitely adds the humanity, the human element to that character. She's the window
through which we can see that instead of just all bombast and lightning guns.
Right. Yeah. So, and there's something sad about that it just really makes you like, oh man, this guy used to be a sane guy and he made some poor decisions and he just snapped.
We don't get that, right? The last time we really got that was a little bit of Two-Face and a little bit of Mr. Freeze.
Right.
But even then, with Mr. Freeze, we recognize that Nora is part of his tragic origin, but we don't
ever
have a
Nora.
Connection to Nora.
Yeah, right.
Our connection to Nora is through Freeze. And while our connection to Two-Face is definitely through his fiance at the beginning, we never hear from her again outside of the two-parter. Like Two-Face becomes, his own entity, and we don't need her anymore.
Grace.
Yes.
That's a shame. I kind of wish they would have brought that back up.
I know
again.
she's a piece of continuity that could have been really, really interesting, really heart-tugging.
I think so.
And Cleo is the same way.
Yeah, Cleo's great. She gives us that window. So all around, I feel like it's a good episode. Like it has everything I want in a Batman the Animated Series episode, and just the amount of like thought and creativity and just the great writing that went into making such an obscure, seemingly, I mean, obviously it's a cartoon, but just so over the top, kind of cartoony.
Right.
Oh, this guy thinks he's Zeus. That's goofy.
He's actually really over the top for the tone of BTAS generally. Like he's and he was honestly, we'll talk a little bit more about the comic book stuff here in a second, but he was kind of a weird pull back in the day too. But yeah, for the level of craft that was brought to a Maxi Zeus episode, do you remember? I just took so much note of it. Do you remember the opening scene? Like how we are introduced to Zeus before we are properly introduced?
He zaps that dude in the alleyway.
Right, but it starts with a match strike, right? Like there's like a match strike that lights the title card, like it burns the title card away, right? And then we check the watch and a newspaper blows, and it's like it's leading us along with this guy who's frantically running away. We don't know who he is. We don't know why it's a big deal.
He's running away from somebody.
He's running away from somebody. But they're using these very like Hitchcockian.
Yes, definitely.
Like the clock is ticking, the match is burning down, the paper blows across, which leads our eye to now we join his running feet.
Yes.
I mean, it's real Alfred Hitchcock level stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Into a blind alley, and then we are introduced to Zeus. We get all of that voice,
and he's all very ominous too. You see the voice, and you hear the big shadowic figure, and of course he's a huge, intimidating figure.
Yeah. And the voice, that is the really cool juxtaposition that maybe shouldn't have worked, but really did for me, is that you get all of the "I am Zeus" voice with a very, at the beginning, traditional Batman villain silhouette.
It's very the context and the subversion there, I think, is really interesting, and definitely you're right, because it kind of paints him as like a horrific monster before we even see him, and then he has the big voice, which is not what you're expecting, but you're associating that with it's scary.
Yeah,
even though normally
our clown voice is very sinister in the Joker, right? But this guy is just all turned to 11 all the time. It's so good.
Very clever way to introduce the character. Now, Josh, I want to get your take. Where did this guy come from, comics wise? Give it to me.
All right, let's talk about that. So he is not tremendously old as these things go. I mean, remember, we're talking about the Joker shows up in 1940, right?
Really?
Yeah. He actually first appears in Detective Comics 483, cover dated May 1979.
Wow.
Yes, very recent. And
I would have guessed he was a really old-timey character.
Doesn't he feel more like the 60s weirdness?
Really does.
Yes. It's and created by one name you may not recognize, Don Newton on art chores, but the writer is Denny O'Neil.
Denny O'Neil again.
Who we just got done talking about as a co-creator that brought Batman into a more dark, gothic, serious space.
Gave us Ra's al Ghul.
That also had Ra's al Ghul.
Yes.
So it's not that gothic and dark, but...
Why do I get the feeling... Okay, now that you're saying it, it seems like the creators of Batman were going through the comics history like, all right, we've hit the Denny O'Neil, so let's write all the Denny O'Neil stuff into the show.
Know, that's an interesting insight, because we are very close in production order with Demon's Quest, and this one's not written by Denny O'Neil. Like, they gave the Ra's episodes to Denny to screenplay, to teleplay. But I kind of do wonder when you say that, if you've got people sort of flipping through the archives and they go, we've got a Maxi Zeus episode in us, right? Yeah. But I mean, largely, he's basically, well, his psychosis is the same. He's actually like a Greek history teacher who loses his mind when his wife leaves him.
Right.
In a way, he reminds me more of Batman 66 King Tut. Are you familiar with that villain?
I am familiar with King Tut. Yeah. Only loosely. I know a little bit about him.
He's a history professor who got hit in the head. He had a head injury, and when he woke up, he thought he was King Tut.
Yeah.
And starts turning that into a life of crime. So again, even in Batman 66, you get this kind of tragic thing going on there, where most of the time Burt Ward's Robin and Adam West's Batman talk about them as archfiends that are irredeemable. They actually show a lot of sadness over King Tut. Like, he's just a normal guy who got bonked on the head and turned into this archfiend. We have to help him and save him. And so you get that like moved forward into Maxi Zeus. So his confusion and psychosis is basically the same, but the reasons that he got there are very different. And honestly, BTAS does it better.
Okay, BTAS.
I love Denny O'Neil.
Sure,
I love Denny O'Neil, but BTAS has to introduce these characters and make them pay off in a way that comic books don't.
Right.
Certainly not the way that comic books were being written in 1979. We had a little more room to breathe, where we could get connected to the villain over a little more time. We could be a little more focused on the big crazy action and less interested in his motivations. But that's not how BTAS does it. BTAS always says, why can't we do both?
Right.
So
Right. No, agreed. I was researching. He actually hasn't made many appearances in other media.
No.
Really, hardly at all. He doesn't even appear in the Arkham games, though he does. There is a cameo with the Gotham City Olympus that shows up in Batman Arkham City. He doesn't show up in any of the movies. So this is a really obscure
He's
character.
very obscure. I mean, even for Batman villains that have like Signal Man and Kite Man and stuff like that,
yeah.
Maxi Zeus is an oddball.
I mean, I would seriously put him like in the D-list category.
Oh, definitely.
Not in terms of, like,
even for Batman, he would be a D-list, not in Batman's rogues gallery. The reason I say that is only 3 superheroes have good rogues galleries, and Batman's one of them. Right?
Batman, Superman, Spider-Man.
Nope. Superman's rogues gallery is crap. It basically consists of Lex Luthor, and they borrowed Darkseid. He does not have a good rogues gallery. Batman, Spider-Man, and The Flash.
And The Flash.
All
Really?
have fantastic rogues galleries. Nobody else even compares. Now, I will say a reason that I remembered Maxi Zeus being part of Arkham Asylum is because I remembered the end of this episode. Arkham Asylum, the video game. He stood out to me.
Is he make an appearance in that game?
I think that you
find his cell, right?
Cell,
yeah.
And again, if you know the character, it's very evocative. But it stood out to me even more because I remembered the end of this episode where he is being walked through Arkham and tying the various other roads.
Oh man,
to particular
talk about
Greek
that's
gods.
where I was like, this is a weird episode, but also really sad because he really thinks he's going into Arkham Asylum, one of the worst places on earth, and he thinks he's made it.
Right. This looks
crazy.
like Olympus because here are the other gods.
Yes.
Right. And let me say, I'm very impressed with the pulls.
Oh yeah,
On those. I mean,
clever.
Demeter, pretty obvious for Poison Ivy, but tying Mirthful Hermes to the Joker.
Yeah, the Joker. Which, by the way, Joker did the weird tongue action. Man, what was going on there?
I don't know.
So weird.
And especially a pull for Janus,
Yes.
the two-faced god.
Two-faced
I mean,
god.
technically, okay, pedantic hat on, technically a Roman god, I believe, not a Greek god, but
Janus,
still,
yes, correct.
But still, it's all classical. And I only bring it up because Maxi says Maxi Zeus, not Maxi Jupiter. But
Right.
still,
Yes.
No, I really liked that, and I liked it when he mistook Batman for Hades.
That
initially.
was hilarious, by the way.
Such a good pull.
My brother Hades.
What I liked that it did for the story is it let them have a non-confrontational conversation,
Right.
where we could get a little bit of that Maxi Zeus pathos,
Yep.
and see also just how far around the bend he is.
Yeah.
And we see that sometimes Batman talks to the people before he has to punch them. Hey,
Yes.
can we talk our way out of this?
Is there anything we can do to keep you from, going crazy and blowing up
does
the city?
it have to be the way that it's going to be? Let's find out. And usually the answer is yes.
Yes.
You can't reason with the Joker. You can't reason with the
Well, you
Riddler.
can't reason with crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
But I don't know you. Let's find out if I can reason with you.
but yeah, but it's just
Oh,
really,
heavens no.
just very clever. Yeah, just very clever writing though, because it's like Batman ascending with his the Batwing up through the clouds, and he's he's a bat and he's wearing black, so of course he's Hades. That's just really clever.
Well, if you want to play
It's
with
coming
that
from the
some
world
more,
below, yeah.
if you want to play with that some more, Grant Morrison's phenomenal run of Justice League in the early 2000s, late 90s into the 2000s. He very purposefully took the Justice League as Greek gods. He never had anyone say it out loud. That's what he was doing on purpose. This is a pantheon. I might as well map it to the most classical pantheon for Western civilization. So you have Superman, who is very clearly a sky god, right? So he's your Zeus, not in temperament, but in the preeminent place, most powerful, shining example, kind of Zeus, the lawgiver, right? And then some of the other ones are very obvious. Hermes is to, is to the Flash, Dionysus to Plastic Man, so he starts doing the deep cut. But the one that really shocked me when I read about him talking about this was Batman. Lives underground. Hades was well known for his wealth, actually, because all of the wealth of the world is underground in your gems and your precious metals.
Right.
Our more modern conception of Hades lends itself a lot to Byronic heroes, which Batman's very much a Byronic hero.
Yep.
At the time, especially at the beginning of that run, Batman was not an official member. He was an adjunct member. Look, he still showed up every issue, but on paper, he was not a member.
I'm part-time.
Hades was not allowed in Olympus.
That's right. Yes, correct.
He was forbidden, partly because Zeus is a jerk, and partly because he was really upset with his brothers. Anyway, so I just really, all of that, it's really meaty mythological stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
Very
cool.
cool.
For a one-off episode, there's a lot going on.
Makes you wonder if Morrison watched this episode for inspiration.
The timing would be very concurrent, and Morrison tends to bring really big ideas anyway.
Right.
But we're all drawing from the well of Western civilization.
It's true, though. I mean,
yeah.
yes. I mean, superheroes are your modern Greek gods.
There's definitely an angle to be taken on superheroes as a type of modern mythology, right?
Yes.
A type of modern fable or folktale. So yeah, it's good. It's the kind of thing I expect from Morrison. As good as BTAS is, we don't normally get that kind of literary stuff going on outside of the noir genre.
Right.
So.
Speaking of literary nods, man, there was a ton of them this episode. My favorite was Zeus started citing Percy Shelley's Ozymandias.
Yes.
Ozymandias, yeah, one of my favorite poems. I was like, whoa! He says, "Look on my works, ye mighty in despair." I was like, oh snap! They're going full in. They're going all in on the literary.
It's another nod
references.
towards Batman as Byronic hero too, because Pierce Bysshe Shelley and Byron were pals. Right, but wrote very different things and had very different outlooks on the world.
Correct.
And so we're going to set those two guys next to one another in Maxi Zeus and Batman. Yeah,
Clever.
literary. Yeah.
Very clever. I did really enjoy seeing Batman fight the Parthenon, the snakes. Was really clever.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. It was
Maxi
fun.
Zeus committed to the theme, right? And so did the writers.
Yes.
Because think back to the first appearance of the Riddler. We love the Riddler. We love everything going on in that episode.
Yeah, but
his
they don't
riddles
commit to the
are
riddles.
junk.
Yeah.
You know, except for one, right? Like there's one or two good riddles and the rest are junk. Here, they were like, okay, we really want to think this out. We've got Furies with machine guns in their mouths. We've got the snakes. We've got him mistaking Batman for Hades. We're doing this thing. It's so good. Up to and including a nod to at least my most recognizable classical mythology touchstone. You'll note that Maxi Zeus had a bunch of clay figures of important people in Gotham.
He did.
Nodding at 1980s Clash of the Titans.
Nice.
So good.
Oh, very nice. Yes, the Clash of the Titans was on the brain. I felt like this was a Clash of the Titans guest starring Batman at times, even.
Yeah.
So, it was a nice nod. Well, Joshua, so it sounds like on our recommendation scale, we're saying, yeah, absolutely watch this episode.
I'm saying it's a must watch.
Yeah, I think
it's
so.
so good. Like
think
it
so.
doesn't impact whatever larger continuity BTAS is doing, but it's such an amazing piece of 22 minutes of work that you are poorer if you don't watch the Maxi Zeus episode.
I agree. Well, and I think what's great is it removes a lot of the baggage you'd have from other villains or stories, and it's like, hey, let's just see what the writers can come up with like a D-list villain, and they do great. They did great work, and it has everything I love about the show contained in one 22-minute episode. All right, Joshua, so as we do normally, we're going to go ahead and close out our show with alternate media recommendations. What else? What else would you recommend to the listeners?
Well, I tipped my hand a little bit earlier when I mentioned the allusion to 1980s Clash of the Titans, because I'm going to say, if you are not familiar with that film,
Oh, gosh.
just go watch it.
Yeah, it's so good.
I have written about it for the Cinematropolis. It was very informative to me, to kind of an early forming creative brain, Josh, as a child. So it's a big deal. And I think...
And the stop motion animation, that is just...
is so good.
Incredible.
But it's also this is something I kind of write partly about in the article. It's a liminal space where it exists after Star Wars, but almost no one was capable of doing what Star Wars had done yet.
Right.
So our next big mythological adventure goes right back to the best stop motion animation, but nevertheless... It's a thing that exists after Star Wars, but feels like a step backwards.
Right.
In everything except for the way the story is put together and the acting. And they hire a lot of actors.
Oh, yeah.
For this. And
They have
Batman
giant
tie-in.
extras, yeah.
And a little Batman tie-in. Perseus's mentor is Burgess Meredith, also known as the Penguin from Batman 66.
Nice.
So I can tie it all together.
It's all tied in together.
Caleb, what about yourself?
So I don't know, 3 different ones. I mean, have you seen Hercules? Disney's Hercules. I'm sure there's a live action adaptation coming soon.
Oh, I love Disney's Hercules.
I think it's great.
It's a very good Superman story.
See what you're doing there. More ties. I'm going to throw out, I don't know, I was just going to Greek movies, and you already said Clash of Titans, and I knew you were going to say that one. So
I knew you knew.
So I got to throw out, I don't know, Troy. It's kind of a weird pool. It came out like right after. It was back when everyone was trying to remake their Lord of the Rings movies. So it had Brad Pitt as Achilles, and it was good. And they even had Orlando Bloom in it. Great cast. I think that was...
And it mostly holds up. I have seen it relatively recently, and it still mostly holds up.
Well, it relies largely on practical effects. I mean, the only other thing is like maybe the whitewashing of the acting. That's that's the thing.
Well, welcome to still a problem in the year of our Lord 2018.
Exactly. So, but it's got Brian Cox as Agamemnon. I mean, it's a great little epic. It's a great epic film, and if you're into the Greek mythology group stuff, I recommend it. And lastly, this is the weirdest, dumbest pool, but the whole time they're up on the Parthenon inside of on top of a skyscraper, and then there's a scene where the pig runs across the hall. It reminded me that in the final boss fight of Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, which is also in a weirdly tiny room that's on top of the castle. It's like the throne room, and then one of the forms is Ganon, who's a pig running around the very, very similar looking room. And I was like, everyone go play Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess 2006. It's a great game.
Well, that about wraps up this animated discussion. Caleb, where can people go to continue the conversation with you?
Well, Joshua, you can always find me on Twitter talking about film, television, video games, and all sorts of other pop culture goodness at C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk. I'm also the editor-in-chief and film critic at the Cinematropolis, and we publish these in-depth essays on all types of different films, oftentimes including science fiction and superhero films, all the stuff you'd want to read about. And you can find all of these articles at thecinematropolis.com. Joshua, what about you?
I'm also most active on Twitter, where you can find me easily enough at Joshua Unruh. And remember that an animated discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions.
Joshua, are you seeing what I'm saying to you?
This is a visual joke. It's not going to work.
I know. Why would you do that? Okay, join us in our next animated discussion, Season 1, Episode 64, Read My Lips.
Until next time, we'll see you back here. Same bat time, same bat channel.